Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joel Amadon.
And I'm Ann Monroe.
And this is The Teacher's Journey, where we discuss mile markers on the road to better teaching.
The Teacher's Journey is brought to you by the University of Mississippi School of Education and is an Amadon Planet production.
All right, this is episode 1, Ann. You excited?
I'm excited. I'm ready to go.
Well, I was looking around we need to talk to a teacher in order to do this first episode. Because remember, the Teacher's Journey is all about these mile markers of professional development, these mile markers of development as a teacher. And we're looking around. Ooh, actually, I see a teacher right in front of me, Ann. I think you're going to be our first guest.
Oh, great. Well, you know what? Let's do it.
All right. So we talked about this in the trailer, but this is something where we're documenting these, these mile markers of our development on the journey to better teaching. I think we actually named the episode or named the podcast pretty well in that way. And so we're really going to dive into it. But first, I want to ask you, Ann, how did you come to be a teacher? What led you to start the journey?
Well, I will say that I am from a family of educators. So growing up, my mother has 5 sisters, and 4 of them, including my mother, were teachers. And so special education teachers. I have an aunt that was a social worker, a teacher, and then eventually an elementary school principal. So I grew up sitting on the laps of my aunts listening to stories about school and teaching and students. And so I sort of say it's genetic for me. But I've kind of always wanted to be a teacher. I remember very specifically in 4th grade making that sort of decision. That's definitely what I want to do. But one of the funny little anecdotes of that, Joel, is that I remember in 4th grade thinking, I really want to be a teacher, but I sure don't want to get up early. Forgetting that other people get up early regardless of other types of jobs they have. But anyway, I got over that quickly. So I've always wanted to be a teacher, and I really think, one of my first experiences with teaching was in 5th grade. I had the opportunity to work with some of the kindergartners at my school and work with them on their reading and some word recognition and sight word type stuff. And I volunteered to do that and had an absolute blast doing that. And so it sort of, made me realize that sort of inkling in 4th grade to want to be a teacher was definitely, I was on the right track. Yeah. So that's sort of how I became to be, wanted to be a teacher. I went to college specifically to be a teacher, knowing that's what I wanted to do. I didn't change my major or anything like that. Nothing wrong with that, but I didn't have to do that because I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so that's what I did. So you're on the journey. And so, we talk about the mile markers of your development as a teacher. And so where would you place one of those significant mile markers? What artifact would you use to represent your growth as a teacher? Well, I think like everyone and all teachers or pre-service teachers, there's so many things that impact us and influence our decision making with students. But there's a particular one that I wanted to kind of talk about with this podcast, and it happened during my very first year of teaching. I had a job teaching 3rd graders in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and it was my very first year, and it was actually the very first month of my teaching job. And I had this opportunity to go to a professional development. It was kind of like an extra professional development that teachers could sign up for. And Dinah Zike was coming to town, and some of you may know Dinah Zike from her paper folding books and things like that. And so my aunt, who I mentioned before, that was the elementary school principal, she was sort of helping to spearhead this professional development. And she said, you should really go to this, and you need to see Dinah Zike. She's amazing, and we're bringing her into town, and you need to take a professional day off, development day of your own, and come to this. And I said, how do I do that? And because I had just been teaching for a couple of weeks, and I was like, I'm nervous to even ask my principal, can I get a day to go to this professional development?
I just started.
Yeah. And so I got to go, and I figured out how to, turn my time in and ask the principal, and he said, that sounds like a great opportunity. And it was a full-day workshop, and I had the absolute best time. And Dinah Zike did her entire paper folding workshop. I have her book. I bought the book at the workshop, and I still have it. I'm holding it right now, and it has my old teacher name in it
from when
goodness.
I wrote there it is.
My maiden name. And then underneath it has my name now with my office number, so in case somebody finds it, I want it back. It's like my treasured prized possession. I actually couldn't find it earlier this summer, and I remembered I'd let somebody borrow it, but I also remembered, like, I wouldn't let just anybody borrow it.
That's
so I was
right.
like hitting up in the email all of my trusted colleagues. Do you have my book? Do you have my book? Anyway, I found it.
Nice.
So I still have this book, but she taught all of these paper folding techniques, and it sounded crazy. Like, I remember my aunt said, it sounds funny, but she teaches you how to fold paper. And I was like, how is that going to help me?
Yeah.
But it's more than that. It's, how do you create these 3D graphic organizers? How do you get students to write across the curriculum? How do you connect, visuals with their learning, and all sorts of things that we learned about. So right away, I wanted to start using some of the things we did in the workshop. And so I went back to my classroom the next day, and I started a unit in science on plants. And in third grade, there are 4 parts of a plant.
Yeah.
There are more parts, but not until
That's
after
right.
third
Yeah.
grade. But in third grade, there are 4 parts of a plant, and we had been talking about those and the functions of those, with the roots, the stem, the leaves, the flower, and what those do for the plant and what they need and that kind of thing. And so I thought I could use one of these paper folds and do a culminating project where the students create the 4 parts of a plant on this paper fold, and then describe the functions and of the different types parts of the plant. And so I went back to my classroom. I pulled out all of my scrap, that I've been collecting over the years, like scrap materials and paper, and put all the construction paper out on the back table, and got the students to start doing the fold, which is like Dinah Zike's vocabulary, four flap vocabulary fold. And they were going to put the roots at the bottom, the stem, the leaves, and the flower. And on the front of each flap, they were literally going to use scrap paper. And I was like, cut out some roots, make your roots look however you want those. Glue those to the front of the bottom flap, make your stem, make your leaves. Pick all the colors you want, make your flower at the top, and then open up the flap and write about the part of the plant. And I was like, this is going to be great. Well, they turned out beautifully. I was so excited.
Nice.
My kids did a great job. Every plant looked different. Every flower looked different. And the funny thing was that it looked like the kids' personalities, which is great. You had, Travis's roots were all crazy at the bottom, just like he was, awesome and crazy. And, and you had Kate's flower at the top was beautiful and purple and pink and all the things that reminded me of Kate. And so, and then they wrote on the inside, and they were excited to do it. And they, they really enjoyed it. And I was so proud of them. I thought, this is something I'm going to hang up. This will be the first thing I hang up outside of my door. I had this great wall space. And you know how teachers like to pick the best looking stuff to hang outside. And so I mounted their little booklets, their 4 flap folded booklets, onto construction paper, put their names on the bottom, and stapled them all up, or hooked them all up outside of my classroom door. And within like 2 days, all of the teachers, there were like 11 third grade classes. This is a big school.
Yeah.
And they all came in like, oh, we want to do that. We want to do that. All these teachers. And I had they were amazing teachers at this school. It was just an amazing first year experience. But
you're 1 month in, and they wanted
they want to do
what you're doing.
I was like, oh, that made me
awesome.
feel great, right?
Yeah.
And I had these 2 amazing mentor teachers, and they were like, we want to do that. Like, please show us how to do that. And so I showed them how to do it, and I was all excited to share what I had learned at this workshop. And so a few days later, they start putting theirs up in the hallway, and I notice theirs look a little different than mine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, And I noticed that every single one of their kids' flowers was exactly the same, just different colors. Huh. All of the leaves looked exactly the same, just different colors. All of the roots looked exactly the same. Same color. And I was like, oh my. And then I realized that they had created stencils for their kids out of manila folders. Teachers are really good at stuff like that. And they had just passed the stencils around, and the kids picked the colors. And my initial thought as a brand new teacher was, oh no, I've done it wrong. Theirs looks so neat.
Right.
And I should have done stencils. And I thought that for about a half a second. And then I decided, you know what? Nope, mine are better. I was like, Travis's gnarly roots are awesome. Kate's gigantic purple and pink flower is amazing, and it looks nothing like anyone else's.
Right.
And so it was sort of that realization that just because I'm new, or just because I may be doing something a little differently than everyone else, doesn't mean that what I'm doing is wrong or not the right way. And so it was sort of in a way, it was like a confidence builder.
Yeah.
Because not only were people wanting to do something that I had done, and they found value in that, something I had learned and brought back to my classroom, but also that just because I did it in a different way doesn't mean that my way was inferior. And in fact, actually, I think my way was better.
Yeah.
So that's sort of that mile marker where I started thinking, I can make good decisions.
Right.
That my initial decisions, my initial impulse or thought to do something a certain way for the kids was right.
Mm-hmm.
And my whole idea of letting them choose their flower was so they could have some creativity,
right.
have an outlet for self-expression, let them do it their way.
Mm-hmm.
And so give them some choice. That was my initial thought, and I think it was right.
Well, not to put more on you, but like as a trailblazer, but like you were doing STEAM before STEAM, like, right? The artistic expression, being able to.
Exactly, Joel. I didn't even know it.
Yeah, there you go. But for those of you unfamiliar, like STEAM is STEM with the arts integrated within. And so like having that chance for each of Anne's students to express themselves through the creation of these flowers, that's what a better way to lead to engagement. Like, I'm going to make my flower the way I want to. I'm still representing the parts of the flower or parts of the plant, but I'm doing it and also expressing my creativity. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and not all plants look alike. Not all flowers are the same. And for good reason, right? And there's also scientific reasons behind that. So good. Okay. So we have our artifact. The book is right here, so we can point to that as our artifact. So like there's like this, if we want to imagine like those green historical marker signs on the road, on the journey that we're taking. So we've got our sign. So we've kind of we described the context, like what's around it. We also, talked about why this is important to you and your growth as a teacher, giving you that confidence. So there's a couple of things. Like one, you learned you can develop with outside. Just knowing that you can find and seek out those opportunities to develop, because sometimes I think when we're teachers, sometimes we think, well, I can come up with all the answers myself. Right.
And even though we go to classes, like, we still have this like self-reliance. And so there is something like, oh, wow, that's cool. I'm going to do that. And then the fact that you saw your peers wanting to do what you were doing as well, that's kind of a nice lesson. But then also the confidence in your abilities to, I'm going to make this. No, I did this right. I make this decision as a teacher. So that's why it's important to you and your growth as a teacher. But what does the field have to say? So like this is important because we should also, one of the things we want to do is tie this into standards. There's standards for teacher development that we want to look to say like, is this also important to the field? Is there like standards that would apply to this situation?
I think there is. And I think if you look at the INTASC core teaching standards.
What does INTASC stand for?
So INTASC is Interstate New Teacher Assessment and Support Consortium.
There we go. All right.
So that's a lot.
Yep. But we go by INTASC around here.
INTASC, there are 10 standards for good teaching. It's just 10, basic standards for good teaching. And the learner in learning is one domain of the INTASC standards, and Standard 1 says the teacher understands how learners grow and develop. And I think this sort of example of mine by utilizing students' creativity and letting them express themselves and have choice, that shows that I had an understanding of how learners grow and develop. Mm-hmm. That everyone's a little bit different. Travis's gnarly roots are totally fine, and if he has freedom of expression to make them the way he wants, he's going to make them the way he can and the way he wants. Yeah. And so I think that, speaks to INTASC Standard 1. The teacher understands how learners grow and develop. Also, Standard 3 under the learner in learning, encouraging positive social interaction, active engagement in learning, and self-motivation. Yeah. We know that if we give students choice and, what they are doing in the classroom, they're more motivated. We know that motivation and choice go hand in hand. Right. And so where you can give students choice, still within the framework of your standards and what you need them to do, you should give them the choice. Mm-hmm. And so I think it speaks to Standard 3 as well, encouraging positive social interaction, active engagement in learning, and self-motivation. So not only was this an area for me to grow, it was also, showing that I was meeting or in some ways meeting these standards as a young teacher. Yeah. And one thing I want to add to, Joel, about this particular artifact that I'm talking about is that I'm still using the Dinah Zike foldables in my college classroom. I've been using them for years. I started using them the day after I left her workshop and have not stopped. So my kids, all that first year, we used almost every foldable I learned in some way. We decorated our room. We did Venn diagrams, comparing and contrasting. We did a flip book, one of her flip books about one of the stories that we read. I mean, I use them all the time because it was successful.
Yeah.
And the students liked them, and I haven't stopped. I literally have not stopped. I've been using them in college, in the college classroom, and so it's one of those mile markers that's been a really sturdy one for me,
Nice.
and one that's, I keep going back to. So I think that's really neat.
And I think, just knowing you as a colleague for a while now, thinking about the importance of students having choice and feeling like they belong in a classroom, and even at our level where we're teaching teachers, I mean, still, like, everyone has a desire to belong and feel like that they can make choices and do things, and like that the teacher cares about their engagement in the classroom. By doing that, and by honoring the students, which definitely what you did in that example that you gave from your first months of teaching. I mean, you are demonstrating growth in that area. Definitely.
Yeah, and I think, when you're teaching third grade, or you're teaching ninth graders, or you're teaching 12th graders, you're teaching human beings. When you go to college, it's the same. You're teaching human beings. People don't change. The needs that we have as young people are the same needs we have as college students, the same needs that we have as teachers. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's obviously some differences, but in terms of the need to want to give something a try, the need to want to have some choice and some say in what's going on, to have some purpose in what you're doing. This is important whether you're teaching kindergartners or college students or, doctoral students, at the very far end. So these are important lessons. And, I just think that's, good teaching is good teaching. And I think that that's something, the more and more that experience that I have as a teacher, the more I see these similarities from things that worked in my third grade classroom to things that work with high school students to things that work in the college classroom, because it's about humanity. Yeah. And we as humans, what do we need, and what do we need to get out of something, and how do we feel valued, and how do we feel that what we're doing is contributing. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate, Ann, that you shared something from your first months of teaching, because we have some of our graduates there in their first month right now.
That's
of
right.
Teaching, hopefully coming out of a pandemic here, and just knowing that they might be having a major mile marker of their development. Like, we have hindsight. We won't say how much hindsight you have right now from this experience, but a decent amount of hindsight. But like the fact that, and that's, again, part of this, the purpose of this podcast is to help people see, like, because sometimes you're so close to this situation, like, wow, this is really meaningful to me. And like, could this be a mile? Like, could this be a mile marker? It's kind of hard because you're in the weeds and doing it.
It is hard, right, when you're up against it.
Yeah. But thinking back, like, wow, that was a moment. And so we're kind of flipping on some sensors so that people can identify and call out these mile markers of their development, so that they can, one, honor them, but then two, build on them and think about where do they go from there. And we just heard, like, this is something that's rippled throughout your journey as a teacher.
And I think, so, some mile markers are really positive. Like this example that I'm giving, something that really worked out for me and continues to be beneficial. And sometimes a mile marker is not always as positive. It's something you learn not to do, or you made a mistake, but it's a mile marker. So I think it's important as people think about their journey as a teacher and those mile markers that, sometimes they're really positive,
right,
and they're, feel-good mile markers, and sometimes they're wrong turns. Yeah. And a wrong turn is okay as long as you get right back on the road and you start going in the right direction, because the wrong turn, not to go down that road again. Right. And so, they'll vary. These mile markers are different. They'll vary. They're right in front of your face when you don't even realize it. Sometimes they're obvious, sometimes they're not. But when you look back, you're where you are because of, your experiences in these mile markers. So take advantage and learn from every situation.
Perfect. Well, there we go. That was first episode here. So thank you for tuning into The Teacher's Journey. This episode may be over, but the journey to better teaching continues. Please subscribe so you are notified when the next episode is ready for you to listen. And if you like what you hear, please rate and review the podcast. And finally, thank you for taking the journey to better teaching. This world is a better place because you have used the gifts you have been given to teach others.